So this presentation is on online education and its changes throughout history. So we begin with where before this only aristocracy could get a formal secondary education because lower classes had to go to work and provide for their families more. So this created kind of a social gap within learning. However, with the invention of correspondence learning, we now have the availability to those workers to get information sent to them to be able to learn things. However, we started off with only a certain topic of shorthand. So that only helped a certain group that wanted to maybe go into secretarial positions with the beginning of the industrial age. However, then we transitioned to have a specific school that geared itself towards women and opened up that for that social group. Then we have an entire school that caters a degree or degrees to entirely correspondence learning within a few kind of summer workshops. So this opens up where now these lower class people can get an entire degree, just like before only was available to the aristocracy. So this opens up a lot of availabilities. Then from just all kind of correspondence or mail learning, now we transition with the invention of other media types such as the lantern slide and motion pictures. Specifically, however, a very promising invention was the instructional radio. This then kind of created educational programs and specific things that led to today's like PBS and History Channel, such types of things. After this, we have to begin thinking about the invention of the computer and how that changed and influenced history. We started off with just the Turing machine that just did a certain one specific function, and that's all it did. Then we transitioned to the Colossus, which helped us in World War II, specifically the British, and was a codebreaker machine. And so that then had multiple programs within one machine. So you can kind of see the progression here. After that, we have the EDSAC, which is the first stored program computer, which is important, obviously, because now we rely on technology with stored programs within it. After that, it was the Programma 101, which was the first desktop computer. It looks very different than what we're used to today, but that is where the market kind of then transitioned into not a room computer, but a desktop computer. And then we have the beginnings of the internet. So now that we have these computers, we wanted to connect them, same as what we had been doing with television and radio before this. So we successfully connected one node to another node with the ARPANET. After this, we in the US began talking about, in education at least, andragogy. Before this, it had been spoken of in Europe, and before that even more, with its basis in Greece education and everything like that, and then in Roman education. But Malcolm Knowles was the beginning of the andragogy movement, if you will, in the US. In that same decade, we had the next computer step of the Altair 8800, where you had to have a series of switches that led to different instances of input or output data. From there, we have the first laptop or portable computer. It only has a 5-inch screen though, so you won't be seeing too much happening, and it has a very small amount of RAM. It did have floppy disk drives though, so you could input information, same as what we're used to nowadays, but a little less. Then we had the beginning of the World Wide Web, what we still use now. This specifically shows one system of network nodes. So the entire internet or interweb as we're used to today is a series of connections of different nodes around the entire world. From there, because of this new invention of the internet, we can now have computer-based training and technology-based training, which then leads us into web-based instruction. So all of these are kind of the beginning of what we now coin e-learning. It was not necessarily called that yet, but that's the beginning of it. It didn't lead where we thought it would though. So that is then leading us towards the beginning of blended learning, where it is, as it sounds, a kind of connection between both classroom learning and kind of that computer-based learning. So after we kind of perfect that a little bit more, as much as we have so far, we then go back to e-learning or electronic learning, and that is still where we're kind of headed today, with formal learning as we are in this class, or informal learning such as what's shown on in the picture, from YouTube videos or ebooks or things that are accessible within apps on your cell phone. Anything of that nature would be considered e-learning. So as we've seen, all of this kind of started out with the invention of the thought of not having to go in to a formal classroom. After that, with the invention of the computer, that led us towards e-learning. Psychologically, being in a classroom, you are kind of owning up to your level of knowledge or avoiding it and not learning, which is always a shame. This e-learning, though, adds a layer of anonymity where individuals can learn at their own pace and level without being ashamed of possibly being rather low in some subject areas. And so this new beginning of education has really changed the whole psychology of education itself. So this is where I will leave you, and I hope that this has been instructive.